before we jump in and I introduce myself, so how many people are ops or like own IAM and cost? Hey, all right, good. This is going to be relevant for you then. TJ Wenger, I've been with Sonrai here for a little over 2 years now, and basically what I own the cloud operations team and IAM and all the infrastructure and that sort of thing, ops. And one thing that I've struggled with, and we did struggle with at Sonrai, and I've struggled with at the other SaaS companies that I worked for, is IAM and basically managing it and managing access and controlling costs. So those two things tend to go hand in hand from my experience. I'm in charge of both. So how do we manage that? How does Sonrai help? And what are some of the other ways outside of Sonrai that we manage that? So we'll just jump right in. So privilege access management. So we're basically a cloud PAM, and basically what my experience has driven me to believe, when the cloud kind of came to be, and so this is kind of like the talk before me, the guy was like, this is control tower. So if you're starting greenfield, it's great, but if you've started with the cloud and originally you have a lot of cruft and a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of those things are identities. And so one of the things with identities, when developers first getting started with all this, was like they didn't know what identities needed access to in AWS, so they just gave them access to everything, so they could go build or do whatever they need to do, from human permissions to non-human permissions or machine permissions and stuff like that. And so what we tend to find is with any sort of KIM product like Wiz or anything like that, that's going to tell you, hey, you've got all these users that have all this access, right? If the user is overprivileged, if the user is there, it has access, but nobody uses it anymore, it'll tell you that, but then you have to go through whatever your process is to either roll that back or strip it or that sort of thing. And so what we found is, basically DevOps teams are over here, they're over provisioning permissions so they can get built what they need to get built. You've got SecOps that is trying to manage that on the other side, and they're clashing because SecOps is like, why do we have 300 users and why do they have all this access? And so AWS has these great things, SCPs, RCPs, so service control policies. You can go in and basically with SCPs, you can control services, you can disable services, and write all sorts of fun Terraform and CloudFormation code to write your own SCPs. They just came out with the RCPs last year, which you can disable regions and that sort of thing. All great things, but it's also very time-consuming, very manual, right? And so we wanted to take that KIM and kind of that SCP, RCP thing and take it to the next level, and basically say, how do we automate this, right? And so through the magic of CloudFormation, EventBridge, and Sonrai, we basically have gone into that. So you should see the term zombie up here. So zombie is basically an identity that's no longer in use. Basically, you've got identities out there. It has provisioned access, but it hasn't been accessed in 30, 60, 90, 120 days, whatever you prefer. And so what we find is as we, through our own, we have zombies too. I'll show that in a minute. But as we've onboarded customers and stuff, like customers are just flabbergasted at the amount of these identities that they have out there. We were just talking like, even our demo account, which you'll see up here, is like 600 zombies. Like, that's not true. That's actually a low number for zombies that we've seen. And we're talking about onboarding anything from accounts from 8 AWS accounts in an org to like 12. So how do we manage that? And then how does this tie to cost too, right? That's the other thing aspect of it that I want to talk about here is not only do you have risk in, security risk and everything like that, but by having regions and services out there, you have risk to cost because now people can provision those assets. And how many people have ever found like an asset in a region that was just running, that somebody forgot about and it was just running in the background? So again, that's where the cost risk side of this comes into play, as it's a preventative measure on that side. So basically what we did is using CloudFormation, we go in and we do what we initially discover of your AWS organization. We deploy some stuff. We look at your cloud trail, that sort of thing, and we discover your IAM permissions in your organization. And from there, we're able to suck in all those bits and tell you exactly who's got access to what, and where and how. So these are what we call our hero cards. So we have regions over here. We've got 2 regions enabled. Again, this is a demo account. Third parties, we can also look at those. We can say these are the third parties that have access to your organization. Unused services, again, services that are enabled but not in use, you can turn those off. Zombies, provisioned users that have access that nobody uses. And then over-privileged users, which are basically users that have a wide amount of access but are in use but only use some of that access. And so we actually integrate, so what we did, again, and you can do all this stuff manually through SCPs and RCPs, and I don't want to, that would take a lot longer than 25 minutes, so I can't get into that. But basically, you come in here and you can literally hit the button, quarantine, and then poof. Those 626 zombies are now going to get quarantined, and they're not going to have that access anymore. So we're basically quarantining them and stripping out their access. We're not removing the identities, we're just stripping out their access. And you don't have to go in, you don't have to write SCPs, you don't have to update your Terraform for permissions or anything like that. You literally just click the button, and those are going to be done. And it's 626 of them, so it's going to take some time. But on top of that, if you've got a protected service, so what we call what we do with services is we can protect them. So you can disable them completely, or you can protect them. And what that does is, so like anytime somebody tries to access that service, we integrate with Slack, we can integrate with Teams. Whoever is on that account as an approver would get a notification in Slack or get a notification in Teams and say, hey, such and such identity is trying to access this service. Do you want to grant them access? And you just hit approve. You can time box it. So that's where the JIT comes into play. We have just in time. So basically, Joe Schmo, we can basically say it tied to the AWS identity for Joe Schmo, and say Joe Schmo is trying to access as an administrator the EC2 services in this account. And you can say, I'm going to give Joe Schmo access to EC2 for 60 minutes. Click approve. In 60 minutes, that time will run out. His access will be stripped out again. So all that, wow, this is really, gotta love live demos. So that is what we are all about. And again, so the cost side of this is just disabling regions, disabling services, prevents that cost risk. And then, yeah, that's pretty much what we're all about. That's exactly where this was kind of born from in my experience, right? Is the first question you get a SOC is like, who has access to what, right? And so any Kim will tell you that. And then Kim will tell you who has access to what. The next question on the SOC list, though, is like, how do you control that access? There's going to be a change control process. There's going to be Terraform. There's going to be whatever. This takes all that out of it. You know, I basically, hey, there you go. Congrats. All of our zombies are gone. So those 626 identities that were out there just floating around that had access but hadn't accessed in the past 90 days, no longer an issue. And again, if you go into, if somebody wanted to, and you can kind of see partially protected, I'm at the top level, that's why. This is your top org. Here's your org hierarchy, just matches up with your AWS org structure. You come in here, you can disable services at the org level, you can disable them at the account level. You can protect. Let's just go into EC2 here. So EC2, since it's protected, so basically anything that's sensitive permissions is going to be protected. You can add exemptions up front. So basically, if you have something coming up, you know, like you need an identity to be exempted, you can add it to the exemption list. That way, that identity doesn't prompt or anything like that. Excuse me. It just gets approved. It just is allowed access as necessary. So, what else we got here? So, like I said, we have a free trial. There's my LinkedIn if you have any questions. But this has been a problem and outside of a problem for me for a very long time. I'm lucky to be here at Sonrai, and I get to test drive. I mean, I'm our #1 critic. It's kind of a fun position to be in because I'm the guy that controls this for Sonrai, and so I'm the first customer, and I get to give them all the feedback of that wasn't great. That didn't work. This didn't work. That worked great. And get really excited about it. But like I can't say enough about how much time it saved me, not only here, but if I had had it all the other places that I've been, it would have saved me a ton of time previously too.